God, how I wish I knew these 5 things before I started med school! What's up guys, John Hill Medic back with another video. This video is a little bit different than usual because it's not just a vlog. This is more of like an fun information video though. As you can tell by the title, this video is about all the stuff I wish I knew about med school before I started med school. So without further ado, let's get into this video. So this is 5 things I wish I knew before I started med school. Let's get into this. And because this is a John Hill Medic vlog, I'm doing something a little bit different, and today I am starting something called Medic Toons. So basically I have animated my anecdotes in this video into cartoons called the Medic Toons. So anybody watching this video, please let me know what you think of the Medic Toons, because this is the first time I've ever done this, so make sure to leave a comment if they're enjoyable. Without further ado, let's get into my top 5 things I wish I knew before I started medical school. Coming in at number 1. So when I went to med school, I was 17 years of age. And it was pretty intimidating because in my year there were lots of mature students. So I was pretty intimidated, and I was kind of expecting to be the dumbest person in my year. My entire life I'd heard that, you know, medical students are the creme de la creme, smartest, blah blah blah. And that's true. A lot of them are incredibly good at taking exams and learning stuff in textbooks. That is 100% true. But something which nobody has really said before or had told me is that there are a lot of people in med school who kind of leave you scratching your head about how the hell they got in. So, quick story time. In 3rd year, myself and my placement partners were on placement during a junior doctor strike. One of my placement partners realised the hospital was more quiet than usual and said, "Why is nobody here, man?" "Because they're on strike," my other placement partner replied. "What's a strike?" At this point, my other placement partner couldn't believe what was happening, neither could I. He decided to take over and said, "You stop working because you want change at your work environment." To which my other placement partner responded with, "Cool, you get paid and don't come in?" At this point, everybody, the doctor, the nurses, everyone just looked at the 3 of us. And then my placement partner tried one more time and said, "No, you don't get paid." "Then what's the point of a strike, man?" And after that, the consultant yelled at us and told us to go and bother someone else. So yeah, that literally happened. That was an actual story, literally what happened, word for word. I felt bad myself. I was like, you know, there's a guy in my year who doesn't know what a strike is. He's 21 and he had no idea what a strike is. So that was pretty humbling, I'm gonna be real. And if that wasn't enough for you guys, I'm gonna give you another story because this one's more clinical. So, quick story time, part 2. Now we fast forward to year 4, so close to the end of med school. This time on the oncology ward. Mind if a couple of my students examine you? Not at all, go right ahead. You examine the abdomen and report your findings. So I was a bit nervous, but luckily enough, I performed an abdominal exam, and by the grace of God, I actually felt a lump. "Well, what did you find?" I was asked. "A mass in the left upper quadrant, maybe a descending colon cancer. Good differential." You, same exam please. Now, as I said before, this was year 4, right? Almost the end of med school, so we weren't rookies when we were doing this. And so I kid you not, this girl performed an abdo exam, and when was asked to report her findings, she looked at the doctor and said, "Not much." At which point the consultant put his head in his hands and gave up on us for the rest. So that's the first thing, and probably one of the biggest things that I wish I kind of knew, because it would have settled my nerves. Definitely would have helped me kind of settle into med school a lot better. Took me a few years to realise. By about 3rd year I was like, okay, what the hell is going on here? So now for the second thing I wish I knew before starting med school. This is the exact map of Devon and Cornwall, which me, JSL, John Hill Medic, has created from memory. The second thing I wish I knew before med school. You need to have a driving license, or just accept that a lot of your life When I say life, I mean early morning and late at night will be on public transport. So this is something that nobody really told me at all, and I don't think anybody says on YouTube, but this is something that happens at every university you go to. You will have placement all around the area your university is in. So for example, people who go to Southampton Med School, they have placement on the Channel Islands. So they have to take a ferry and then stay on the Channel Islands to go to placement there. So this is just something which I think should be mentioned a bit more, because if you don't have a driving license like me, I didn't have a driving license in the first year, then all of a sudden you have to rely on trains and buses to get the placement. And anybody who lives in England knows that you don't want your mood for the entire day to be reliant on the buses and train services. Get your driving license, get a car, and your life will be a lot easier. So, the third thing I wish I knew before I started med school is nobody told me how toxic the medical school culture really is. Now, I think this is just like life in general. Everything's toxic now. I think everybody can agree on that, whether you're a law student, whether you're a nursing student, dentistry, medicine, just stuff's toxic. But nobody and nothing really prepared me for how toxic med school culture truly is. So yet again, quick story time here. In first year, the exams were preclinical. So this meant lots of pathophysiology, anatomy, things like that. Unfortunately for me, I found the university lectures incredibly boring, and I didn't really know how to study effectively. However, a couple of months into first year, I'd heard about something called MedSoc slides, which were basically cheat sheets which people in the year above had made and put on a Google Doc. It contained all the relevant information for the end of year exam. On top of not having access to these slides, it felt like literally everybody in my year had them. And so, as it turned out, a friend of mine at the time had access to these slides, and I'd ask him, could I have the MedSoc slides? And he'd always respond with, yeah bro, of course. And then a couple of weeks would go by and I'd ask him again, could you send me the MedSoc slides? Yeah bro, for sure. And then a couple of months would go by and I'd say, so, the MedSoc slides. Of course bro, I got you. Then finally, literally a few weeks before the end of year exam, I found a girl who I asked one final time, could I have the MedSoc slides? And she shared them with me there and then. So yeah, that was a true story, and I think, so yet again, this isn't anything new really. I don't think this is just exclusive to med school, people hiding resources from each other, trying to ruin resources, but it's just accentuated in medical school. But yeah, I think honestly have a backup plan to try and do your own thing. Always have your own thing and don't tell everybody about it. Kind of keep yourself to yourself, keep your head down, and yeah, you'll avoid a lot of the toxicity of medical school. So moving on to the fourth thing I wish I knew before starting med school, and this one kind of ties into the setting of where I'm filming this video, in a library. So here I have two books written by a man named Michael Crichton, and Michael Crichton to me is my idol. And so he went to medical school, and then whilst he was in medical school, he became an incredibly prolific writer. You might have heard of some of his books, Jurassic Park, The Andromeda Strain. So he wrote books throughout med school, and then he created ER, which was like the first big medical TV show. The guy's just a genius and I love him, and he was one of the reasons I was inspired to become a doctor. And he wrote these two books that my dad gave me, 5 Patients and Travels. So 5 Patients is purely medical and is based on his time as a resident in America. And this is a really good book. I highly recommend reading these books if you're a prospective med student. I know you're told to read This Is Gonna Hurt, but I thought that was arse. These books are amazing. And Travels is a bit more kind of about his life, but the beginning bit is about his time in med school, and there's some really good anecdotes in this. And so the impression that I kind of got from reading these books and kind of speaking to older doctors is that medicine's work hard, play hard kind of environment, which is basically when you're in med school, you're going to have a lot of teaching in the hospital, you're going to be in the hospital all the time. The consultants, so the senior doctors, are going to kind of be grilling you, expecting you to know stuff, things like that. The highest ROI for learning is when you have a consultant who's a bit rude, kind of grilling you, but also you can tell that he's just trying to teach you stuff. You don't want to have a guy, and this is the anecdote that's coming up, you don't want to have a guy who just wants to bark at you just because, you know, he has an inferiority complex and he just gets off on it. And so yeah, quick story time, speaking about that. Again, back in 4th year, my placement partners and I had to present our individual CBDs. However, the doctor kept us waiting for quite a while. Then when he finally arrived, there was no apology. He just sat down and said, "Right, let's get started. You, go first." So Patrick, my placement partner, spent the next 15 minutes presenting his CBD. Now, this next interaction still makes me wonder what was going through this doctor's mind at the time. Do you watch reality TV? Not really. You don't watch Strictly or Britain's Got Talent? Sometimes Britain's Got Talent. Who's your favourite judge on Britain's Got Talent? Simon Cowell? Right, then I'll give you feedback like Simon Cowell. Bad. That doctor was by far the worst experience I ever had at medical school. He was really awful. He didn't do any teaching at all. All he did was try and humiliate you and then told you to go away and look up whatever he was yelling at you for not knowing. So for me, you know, that the culture that I was expecting of kind of you're on the wards all the day, shadowing a doctor, they're teaching you stuff all the time, wasn't really how it was. Some of the time it was like that, but a lot of the time it was kind of you're with the junior doctor, they try and do their best, and then you either go away and do questions and like learn by yourself, or you try and, you know, find a doctor who's really keen on teaching and then stick with them as much as possible. But that's definitely something that I wasn't expecting. So now moving on to the 5th thing I wish I knew, and this is probably the biggest one, okay? I'm gonna have a sip of coffee for this because you all need to listen up. This is incredibly important, especially if you're gonna stay working in England. So you probably think, I got into med school, I'm in med school, this is great, I just need to focus on getting through it, and then I become a doctor and then I can go off and do whatever I want and it'll be great. No, that's not how it is. That's definitely not, that's how it used to be. If you speak to one of the, you know, boomer doctors, that's how it used to be. I had an ENT surgeon who, he told me a little story about how he didn't know what to do, and then somebody suggested, why don't you try ENT, and then he went for an interview and got the job in a hospital in London. That's a true story. So now there's a big problem in the NHS when it comes to specialty training. Now, everything, including family medicine, is incredibly difficult to get into. And they have these things called ratios, so you can see how many people apply for one space in specialty training. So lots of people end up in a position where they either can't go into a specialty that they actually want to go into, or they're stuck as a junior doctor or a resident, as they're called now. How do you combat this? Well, nobody told me this, and I'm telling you this because this is really, really, really important. You need to, when you're in med school, start doing research. You need to get involved in research, and you need to get involved in doing things called audits. I'm not really too sure what audits are, but you can get involved with them. It's basically filling out an Excel spreadsheet and then you can say you've done an audit. All this stuff goes towards something called a portfolio, and so if you go on, I think it's the NHS website, they'll have for different specialties what they require you to have in your portfolio to make you a viable candidate. And so this culture of, you know, needing to do a bunch of extracurricular stuff adds to the med school toxicity that I was talking about for the 3rd thing I wish I knew before I started med school. But it turns out that if you don't do these things, you basically won't be a viable candidate to get into specialty training, and then you won't be able to progress throughout your career. So yeah, those are the 5 things I wish I knew before I started med school. I hope you guys enjoyed the Medic Tunes. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll catch you in the next video.